Nut and Fancy project continues.
See, I kind of think of this as a mini survival knife. That's why I got it.
Yeah.
Because it's so strong. I should put that lock safety on. Then when you baton like this, just take little cuts according to the blade. See how that's very... It's kind of a lot of wear to put on that tip.
She did. Sweet, you brought food. She bought groceries for me.
A little bit of side to side that'll have to be played. Oh, dude, look at that.
Nice.
Totally failed. And that's with the locks on.
Wow.
Look at that.
How did that fail though?
See this? That it tweaked
slipped.
it. It locked. Oh, I know what happened. This pivot screw loosened up too much.
Yeah.
See if I Loctited the pivot screw. Let's Loctite it real quick. Oh, check that out. See, that's stuff you learn right there. Check doing it.
Take it apart and Loctite it after.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, sometimes a school of hard knocks delivers some nasty surprises. That, again, is one of the purposes here at the Nut and Fancy Project. Hello, Nut and Fancy here. Going to tabletop review the CRKT M21 series of knives. Along with that, I'll show you a variation of the M18 knife. And overall, a good blade, but as you saw, it delivered a nasty surprise. That's probably because I took this knife outside its realistic application. I always kind of envisioned this knife, the M21, specifically this is the M21-04, as a hard use folding knife. I kind of thought perhaps it could function as a survival knife, folding variety. That's because of the locks mechanism, which helps lock that liner lock. We'll talk about that more in a sec. Now it's an auto locks variety on the newer versions. I thought it could take it. I was wrong. As you saw in batoning tests, my son and I, tactical doodle, we quickly discovered that when taken into this application, the M21 can fail and fail miserably. I'm going to be fair to this blade, though. I'm not going to, criticize it too much because it's probably because during the batoning process, this pivot screw came loose, and I have not Loctited it yet. When that happened, and let's just go ahead and get into this. When that happened, it allowed the halves or the handle halves to come loose. The dimension, what am I trying to say? The dimensional consistency between these handle halves is very critical for this liner lock to work properly, even with the locks. When that happened, it loosened up, and as you saw, and as you can see in photograph, the liner was actually allowed to go to the side of the blade tank. And a couple more whacks of the blade, that liner lock bent. Yeah, it shouldn't have happened. However, again, I want to be fair to the design. It's pretty much kind of outside the application. An interesting test though, don't you think? Because it seems like a very sturdy blade. In my opinion, at least in the past, I thought it would be able to take it. Now, can it take it if I properly Loctite that pivot screw like I've told you guys to do? I hadn't done it on the other version of this knife, and I do think that's why that failure occurred. Anyways, it was irreparable. That was a bent liner. I actually disassembled the knife, seeing if I could restore it to functioning order. No worky. I tried, and I'm fairly mechanical. Now, I could have worked at it harder and maybe tried to really bend that liner back into place. But with CRKT being such an awesome company, why even bother? I just sent it back to them with a note, told them, hey, sorry, I bent this. Can you replace it? And you know it. They sent me another one. Here it is, brand new M2104. Thank you, CRKT. They have outstanding customer service. And for the record, I don't want you guys condemning this design because I don't think that would be a fair thing to do. It's pretty much, like I said, took it outside its application. But I did learn a couple lessons. I think you're learning them now. If you want ultimate strength, don't go with a folder. I've said that before in other videos, and occasionally I'll reprove that concept. Go with a fixed blade. And there are several compact fixed blade options out there to put into a survival POU, no doubt. Probably the M2104 or any variation thereof probably isn't it, okay, because it could fail on you. Okay, enough of that. It's an interesting way to open up a tabletop review of an otherwise really good knife by Columbia River Knife and Tool. A lot of guys have been asking for this review. Sorry, it just takes me so long to get around to everything. Also, acquiring the knives takes me a little bit to do. Some are mine, most aren't. They're on loan, or I have to find a different way to get it, maybe at a retailer or something on loan. Just depends. But overall, this is a heavy-duty folder. I'm laughing because it's not that heavy duty, but for most EDC tasks, probably in the POU of emergency defensive tool, this M2104, the larger version, and by the way, sitting on the bottom is the smaller version, make sure I get the nomenclature right, M2102, both in razor edge, i.e. plain non-serrated versions, which I always prefer. But in that role, I think it would function well. You're looking at the AUS8 spear point blade with a deep recurve. I kind of like the blade shape on this. The only thing that I have found that has a very abrupt relief edge. Remember I've talked about this before? Now this brand new one that CRKT sent me in replacement wears a very nice edge on it. Really sharp. Good job on that. The original one, and this is my knife, this smaller one, this is again the 04 version, the 02 version, I had it resharpened because I wanted to make that relief edge a little more gradual. I had my friends at Razor's Edge perform the work for me. Yeah, you can do that on a Lansky sharpener, or any number of resharpening devices, no problem. But that just makes it razor sharp. So that's just my own modification I do on several blades, because I feel like it's kind of a steep grind. Going back to my preferences, and that's just all it is my preference, I generally like that full flat grind. For the gradual approach to the relief edge, makes it better slicer, better cutter. That being said, still a nice blade. Nice unsharpened swedge running on the top spine of that organic shape of the M21 blade, and a lot of guys will like that. Generally, I'm not a super fan of the spear point blades. However, this one's not too bad because it has a lot of belly. If it's a true spear point and doesn't have any belly, I don't like it so much. But generally, it's not too bad. Both the larger M21 and the little brother chilling out there in the background show really nice executions of jimping on the back spine. I know, Nut and Fancy's favorite criticism. Well, in this model and in this design, it's really important because there's no thumb ramp on either knife. Therefore, there's really no way to lock your thumb in, and so traction on the upper spine becomes more critical, especially if you're going to employ this, at least this larger blade, as a tactical folder, i.e. fighting knife if you need to. Any way I can get traction, I'll take it. There's other ways to improve it, as you've seen, skateboard tape, maybe your own jimping modifications. But as it comes from the factory out of the box, nice and sharp, So it digs in the thumb pretty good. I like that. Thumb studs are well executed, no volcano issues. They mesh into the handle as per the Carson design. And really in this knife, they're not designed to deploy the blade. As you can see, they nest in a recess in the aluminum handle. It is a flipper design, designed to be used with your index finger or maybe some other technique you can develop, and out it comes. I like it. I think it's fast, executable from the pocket, not too shabby. Some guys don't like flippers, so I don't mind them. The only thing is, and I've said this in other reviews, is consistency in deployment is kind of critical, especially when you're under stress, because if you carry lots of different knives, which how you doing, I do, you may screw it up. You may forget, oh, I have a flipper today, I have an auto knife today, maybe it's a thumb stud deployment, maybe it's a pocket deployment with a hook, a la, Emerson or something like that. So that's just something you have to live with, deal with, maybe train with if it's really important. So decent blades. The ergonomics on the blades are okay. I would not say they're outstanding. I think the blade is more striking than it is a grade A student in the ergonomics department. That's because you have some sharp corners, not sharp corners, but you have kind of a squared off handle due to the open pillar milled out aluminum handle design. It's not uncomfortable, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying there's lots of other knives that are much more ergonomic than the M21 series. Looks cool though, doesn't it? Looks industrial. I will level the criticism I usually do at handles of open design like this, and that is if you drop them in the mud or the gunk, you're going to pack your blade and you're going to have a little cleanup job on your hands. The smaller one feels a little bit better, the little M2102. I love that one. This is a good EDC blade right here. So that's a POU I'll level for the M2102. The larger brother or bro, I'm going to put in as probably a folding tactical knife. That's the category I'll put it in. Yes, you could use it as an EDC blade, no doubt. Will work fine there. This one excels as EDC though. How's that clip on there? Let me raise the tripod just a little bit. The clip is actually decent. Nice and narrow in profile, doesn't take up a lot of the handle, and thankfully the Carson design allows application of the clip to pretty much any of the four corners. So lefties rejoice, tip up, tip down, you decide. It just depends. It gives you options, at least in the M2104. In the 02, and this is an older version, I don't know if they've changed it at all. It's probably not changed. This one's stuck as a tip down, pivot clip, right hand only. So that kind of sucks a little bit there. So a nicely shaped pocket clip on the M21 series. If I were to change anything, it might be this bent up portion at the end. It kind of sticks out a little far. If you are an M21 user, you might want to think about milling it down on a grinder, reprofiling and rounding it, much like I do with my Cold Steel Voyager knives. And that's because so it won't snag on the stuff as you walk by it. And this is the voice of experience. It can easily, make sure that's focusing, it can easily bend that clip into a non-functioning form. And then you've got a problem. The good news, you can take the clip off, probably re-bend it back into shape. So it is removable, obviously. That's a good thing. Just a minor issue, be aware of it. Let me show you this other variation. This is not an M21. It's a very similar knife by CRKT, and it is the M18 04K. Bought, how you doing, for 19 bucks, 20 bucks, something like that, at Cabela's. If you guys follow me on Twitter, I think I twittered this deal alert for you guys. This is a clearance knife from, of all places, Cabela's, who is pretty much known for kind of expensive prices. And this is very similar to the M2104. It's a solid handled version, aluminum handle. And if I didn't say that, that's T6 aluminum there on both of these knives, actually probably all three. Flipper design. This one does not have auto locks. It has the manual locks that I'll talk about that here in a second. Same exact blade though, that AUS 8 blade with a recurve, nicely finished. And if you were to ask me, I kind of prefer this solid handled M18 over the M21. Call me crazy. If we were to stack them side by side, you can see there's just a little bit of size difference in the handles. Very minor though. A little bit thicker. Well, maybe they're probably the same thickness, but the blades are almost identical. A little bit shorter for the M18. Very similar though. Grip inserts on the M1804. and actually pretty good traction on that. I don't know if they're vinyl or actually they're G10. That's what they are. They feel like G10. Very nice. Kind of a titanium finished handle, solid, and you don't have to worry about putting gunk in it like we talked about with the milled out handle. Do you guys see any disadvantage to this M18 compared to the M21? That's right. You're stuck with a pocket clip right where it is. You can see it's not drilled out on any of the four corners, not even reversible left to right. So, kind of a disadvantage. However, can't get everything, and for $20, an amazing value, especially for an AUS 8, AUS 8 blade steel. Really nice. Really quick, if you guys aren't familiar with the locks mechanism on the M21, and yes, this is a liner lock, and some guys will have an issue with it, and seeing the batoning failure, they will say, well, there you go, a liner lock's a weak knife. Probably can do it. A frame lock probably could have withstood that. Don't know. Depends. You know, again, I'm kind of faulting the fact that that pivot screw became loose to be fair to the knife. I think that's only right to do. But yeah, this is a liner lock for EDC use and maybe occasional emergency tactical defensive. Probably sufficient, but that is somewhat of a thin liner on such a big knife, don't you think? Now they add that auto locks, LAWKS, I've talked about this in other videos, which prevents the actuation or closing of that liner against the tang of the knife. Okay, so in theory that prevents it from closing. And now some guys say, well, you can remove that spring on the auto locks, so it's not an auto lock, you'll have to manually engage it. Fine, you can do that. However, you might want to be aware of this. If you take the spring out on the newer versions of these M21s or other CRKT knives, I don't think they fit it, the locks mechanism, with friction. On the older versions like this M18, pop that out, you can see there's some friction there that enables a lock to stay in one position or another. With the newer versions, no, they don't have to fit it like that because it's spring loaded. You take that spring out though and this thing could be flopping back and forth. The only thing that you might want to do if you never want to use it is you could glue it in position or maybe just completely remove that too. So that's an option, just be advised. For me, I don't think it's a bad thing, and also it's easy enough with a one-handed closure like so. Maybe it's two-handed if you think about it, but pretty easy to actuate overall. The infamous pivot screw, which I talked about, you can adjust that if you need to. I have found on these M21 series that is kind of critical. You'll move it just a little bit. If you move it just a little too far, you just ruin the speed of your deployment. By the way, if I didn't already mention it, this has a really authoritative sound when it comes out. Sounds great, this M21. That's a big plus, and I don't know if it's a function of its aluminum milled out handle, but it sounds cool. Comes out nice and fast, at least from the box. And if you don't baton with it, it locks up solidly left and right, up and down, no problems there at all. Maybe another criticism I have to level at the design is they are not lightweight knives. The M21-04 weighs, the large version, 5.5 ounces. This M18-04 in the back is 5.2 ounces. To me, that's heavy. And the smaller one, which I think is a good EDC blade, still is 3.4 ounces. All wearing AUS 8 blade steels, which is a good blade steel. I've talked about a lot, maybe not the most rust resistant available. Good knife. So heavy duty tactical, you decide. Upsides, good looks, kind of industrial looking, good value. Around $32 is what this one is, I think, maybe 40-ish. Again, I had to speak specific values. I'm sorry, 40 for that one, maybe around $32 for the smaller one. This was a screaming deal. Like I said, you probably won't find that for $20. So for the price paid, amazing quality. AUS 8's blade steel, how often are you going to find that? Fast, innovative deployment with the flipper design. Nice sound. Good belly on that spear blade. Nice finish. Strong tip, if I didn't mention that. Good jimping. The holes in the handle, you know, that's personal preference. Maybe a weak liner lock. You know, got to level that. And they're heavy. So decide. Overall, decent blade. I think it compares nicely with all kinds of other folders out there, especially at the price point. It's rare you're going to find this type of blade steel and this type of quality at a 40, maybe even less price point. There you have it, the Carson M21 series with an M18 thrown in there for good measure. Nothing fancy. Signing off. I probably forgot stuff. I may annotate it. Thanks so much for the good ratings, the good support. As always, keeps me trucking along. Over and out.